In the early 2000s, the city near Aokigahara did something unusual. Every year, they released the number of bodies recovered from the forest. In 2003, it was 105. In 2004, 108. The media ran wild. World's top suicide spot. Hundreds die in death forest each year. Those headlines traveled the world. But they did something else, too. They turned the forest itself into a kind of challenge, a destination. Authorities noticed a painful pattern. The more the numbers were reported, the more the numbers went up. So they stopped releasing them. Not because the deaths didn't matter, because they wanted to starve the forest's reputation. Today, there are still searches, still recoveries, but you won't see yearly tallies in the news. And here's something you don't hear in the sensational stories. Aokigahara is not where most suicides in Japan happen. Not even close. Most happen in cities, in apartments, on train tracks, alone in cars, places where no cameras ever go. But cameras do go to Aokigahara.
In the 2000s and 2010s, Western media discovered Aokigahara. Documentaries showed search parties, long, artful shots of moss and mist, whispers of ghosts and curses. Then came the YouTubers. They brought selfie sticks and nervous laughter. Some treated the forest with a little respect. Others treated it like a haunted house. They filmed abandoned tents like spooky props. They joked nervously about ghosts and demons. They blurred out what should never have been filmed at all. In 2017, one high-profile vlogger walked into Aokigahara with a camera and filmed a body. He laughed. He posted it. The backlash was enormous.
People around the world felt that something deeply private had been violated. Not just Japanese culture. Basic human dignity. Locals, who had spent years trying to reduce the forest's grim allure, watched in horror as international interest exploded. Searches for how to get to Suicide Forest spiked. Travel blogs started listing it as a must-see dark tourism spot. The place that, for decades, had quietly held the pain of thousands, was now clickbait. And in the middle of all that noise were people like Sato, still walking the trails, still hoping to find someone alive before the cameras ever see them.
Whenever Aokigahara comes up, people ask the same question. Why does Japan have a forest like this? Why so many suicides? The answers are complicated. Japan has a history of ritual suicide, seppuku, kamikaze pilots, that sometimes gets romanticized in pop culture. Sacrifice for honor, death over shame. But that's history, not a rulebook. Modern Japan officially strongly discourages suicide. Public campaigns, helplines, posters on train platforms. Legally, you're not allowed to encourage or assist. Still, the country has struggled with high suicide rates, especially among middle-aged men and young people. Work pressure, bullying, isolation, economic recessions, stigma around mental health. Those things don't haunt one forest. They haunt an entire society. Aokigahara is just the symbol where all of it becomes visible.
The tape is new, tied with care every few meters. Whoever hung it didn't want to get lost, or they weren't sure yet if they truly wanted to be. Sato walks quietly. He's learned not to call out right away. If someone is here, alone, their mind is a fragile thing. A sudden shout can make them bolt farther from help. So he follows the tape and listens. A crow calls far off. Twigs crack under his boots. Then, faintly, he hears it. Not words, just a sound, like someone breathing too fast. He rounds a bend and sees the tent. This one is upright, newer, no leaves on top. He stops a few steps away. "Sumimasen," he says softly. "Excuse me." Silence. Then the zipper moves.
A face appears in the gap. Eyes rimmed red. Cheeks hollow. Maybe 19. Maybe 30. Out here, grief and exhaustion age people in strange ways. Sato doesn't ask why they've come. He already knows, in broad strokes. He asks instead, "Have you eaten?" The person blinks, shakes their head. Sato sits down on a rock, a respectful distance away. He reaches into his bag, pulls out 2 rice balls, wrapped in plastic. He places one on the ground between them. He doesn't push it closer, doesn't lean in, just waits. After a long moment, a hand reaches out of the tent and takes it. They eat in silence. Somewhere, a woodpecker taps. The tape flutters gently behind them. Sato tells a story. Not about suicide. About the time he got lost in this forest his first year on the job. How he panicked. How he sat down on a log, sure he was done for. How, eventually, he heard the sound of a highway and found his way back. How did you know which way to go? The person in the tent asks, barely above a whisper. I didn't, Sato says. I just decided I wanted to. They sit there, in that pocket of quiet, for a long time. Later, much later, they will walk out together. Sato will give the person a ride to a local support center. Will hand them off to professionals. Will go home and take off his boots and sit in silence, remembering the sound of that zipper. He will add nothing to the cabin on that day. No backpack. No shoes. No photographs. Just an invisible entry on a mental list he keeps. People who turned around. Aokigahara is not just a horror story. It is a beautiful, strange, living place. Moss blankets the ground in soft,
On clear days, Mount Fuji rises above the trees like something from a painting. There is nothing inherently deadly about this forest. What makes it terrifying is how well it reflects us, our loneliness, our myths, our tendency to turn suffering into spectacle. Aokigahara became suicide forest because novels, manuals, news stories, and videos told people it was. We made it into a stage. But inside, on any given weekday morning, it is just a man like Sato and someone sitting in a tent, deciding.
If you strip away the ghost stories, the cursed tree legends, and the viral videos, what's left is older and simpler. Human beings in pain. Sometimes so much pain that a dark, quiet forest feels like the only place they can breathe. The tragedy of Aokigahara isn't that it's haunted. It's that so many people felt there was nowhere else to go.
Aokigahara will always have its legends. People will keep telling scary stories about it. But somewhere, walking between those trees, is a forest worker with a bag of rice balls, hoping that today is another day when a trail of tape leads not to an ending, but to a second chance.